Hey everyone, welcome into the Prep Baseball Wisconsin WIAA podcast. I'm here with my partner David Yo, and we'll be breaking down the ins and outs of the WIAA baseball season throughout the spring. Our Prep Baseball Wisconsin staff and other coaches from around the WIAA will be joining us on the show to break down some of what happened this week and what's going on throughout the season. So, to introduce my partner, David, how are you doing this morning?
I'm great. I wasn't feeling very optimistic about the schedule of games considering we had snow at the start of the week. But we got a lot of games in. Some teams went out of state, some teams stayed in state. Pretty good first week.
Yeah, for sure. I did want to ask one question. David, you've played a lot. What has been the worst weather game that you've had to deal with in your playing
Ooh.
career?
I do remember my freshman year of high school. We played a game against Kenosha Christian Life. It was a doubleheader. I think it was probably about 35 degrees at game time. And even though I was like a 6'3" lefty, I caught the first maybe 9 or 10 innings of the doubleheader. And I got jammed somewhere in there, so I couldn't feel my right hand really as I was catching. And then I had to pitch the last four, and we got swept. So that probably takes cake for the worst weather. There are plenty of them considering I played, yeah, high school in Wisconsin, a year of college in Minnesota, but that one might have been the worst.
Yeah, I don't know if I can top that. Played in a few snow games, but there were multiple teams in the WIA area that got to go out of state this weekend. Catch a little spring break, but also see some out of state competition and get into some of the action before they have to come back here and play some WIA competition. So, wanted to start with Kettle Moraine. David, what did you see this week?
Yeah, they went 2-1 over the week. Played some teams in Tennessee and Illinois. So they're a team definitely to watch this year, and off to a good start.
Yeah, for sure. They found some success early on. Took on an Illinois team and a couple of Tennessee, so that was great to see. Mosinee was another one. They split a doubleheader early on this spring, and Keegan Jersley, obviously a two-way star for them, for the Indians. He's coming off a great 2023 for them for sure. Got up on the mound to start right away, kind of doing his thing. Went three hit, no innings, 6 Ks. Love to see that, and got the job done at the plate too. He's taken over that leadoff spot, and that's what he's been doing for a while. And then getting other contributions from guys like Gavin Obremski and Brady Loken was another one who got highlighted in our daily roundup. And he's another junior that's going to carry on that prowess that Mosinee has brought for the past couple of years now as a D2 contender. And they'll be ready to go come postseason time. But yeah, it was good to see them split a doubleheader. Not sure always about the competition out of state and how quality it can be, but it's obviously a great experience for them for sure. Moving down the list, Notre Dame Academy, David, they had to face some of the best in Illinois with Joliet Catholic Academy.
Yeah, Joliet Catholic always good program in Illinois, and they had to face uh, Aiden Hazy, who is a Tennessee commit. I never knew quite what to expect first game of the year. I remember one time having to face Luke Fox first game, and that one was rough. I won't tell you the final score of that game, but even then he was throwing maybe 85 to 87. Aiden Hazy came out throwing. He was up to I think in the low 90s. So big righty, and yeah, it's going to be a tough challenge. Notre Dame Academy did actually get to Hazy okay, but ended up falling against Joliet Catholic.
Yeah, Rocco Slavs Balan he's another left-handed arm we saw over the summer at the Rock coming off of injury, and he looked really good just based on box score and stats and that stuff, and he was able to shut down NDA in relief. But man, it's a good transition segue into their conference, and having to face guys like Noah Weck from Manitowoc Lincoln and that deep conference, Craig Cabot from Bayport too, and those guys, they're gonna have work cut out for them in their conference and throughout the regular season. But it'll set them up well again for the postseason and Division II area. Speaking of which, that's where we saw Jefferson. Honestly, might be our team of the week here. From an out-of-state perspective, they went 3-0 on the week. Tyler Frederick and Aiden Kammer were two guys who really stood out both seniors, both taking that next step. Jefferson's been to state 3 years in a row. Just been super impressive. But what we got for Aiden Kammer here to start off?
Yeah, Cameron went 6 for 11 over the week, three doubles, three ribbies. He was excellent taking that leadership role as a senior. It's something that you hope to see from someone who's committed to play at the next level. And then Tyler Frederick also having a great week, 5 for 8, double, couple walks, and complete game shutout against Grandview Heights. Went all 7 innings on 8 strikeouts in that game. So Jefferson getting good production, good leadership from their seniors, and certainly sets the tone for them as they look to continue their run of dominance.
Yeah, head coach Greg Featherston. He's got the Eagles going. They're going strong right now. So, yep, they get back to Wisconsin. They have to face Beloit Turner this week, and that'll be a really good matchup for them. But kind of staying in that area of the state, heading a little north. Both the Watertown, the Hurchin brothers, they stood out this week too. Both got multi-hit games to start, staying hot after a strong spring campaign. I got to go watch the Goslings during the spring season and then followed along with those guys throughout the summer last year, and both continued to elevate their stock and raise themselves as position players that we should become familiar with. And at the plate, they seem very comfortable at the top of Watertown's order, and we really like their progress. And Calvin has looked really good behind the plate with pop times and quick feet. Jacob Hurchin has gotten the job done on the mound too. He's been solid. So they both got multi-hit games against IC Catholic Prep in a border battle on opening day, and that was really good to see. And then just to cap off a little bit of our out-of-state competition, Calvin Moreau, obviously a highly touted prospect in the 2026 class out of Monona Grove. He hit a walk-off home run for the Silver Eagles this week to cap off their time down in Tennessee. That was really great to see. That was just on our social channels and that stuff, and he's primed for a strong sophomore campaign coming off a very solid freshman year for Monona Grove.
Yeah, certainly. And there was a lot of competition out of state, but there also was some competition in state. Pretty much all the games played in the 35, 40-degree weather. The first Division IV game of the year wound up being probably more interesting than anyone was anticipating out in Manawa with a right-handed pitcher that wasn't really that good last year. Tell us what happened out there.
Yeah, Bryce Foster. So going through some research early on opening day, we did have 2 games played in the WIAA between 2 WIAA teams. We'll get to Marquette later, Marquette and Dominican. But first, Bryce Foster out of Manawa. They were taking on Almond Bancroft. So just a little south of Stevens Point for our Wisconsin geography people who are very invested in that. But yeah, Bryce Foster, he's a junior right now and came off a sophomore campaign where he probably didn't get enough innings to really find that rhythm early on for the Wolves. And he finished with a 6.17 ERA and an 0-1 record as a sophomore. So continued to develop, gained some experience, probably added on some strength. And he tossed a no-hitter against Almond Bancroft. First game of the year as Manawa got the win. And that was really great to see. Got a shout out in our daily roundup and that stuff. So possibly setting them up for a future success in the Division IV field for sure. But yeah, that led us into our Marquette Dominican game, and we saw some power at Capco Park.
Yeah, Joey Halzer and Jonah Borchert, both from Marquette, hitting home runs, which might not seem that impressive, but it was at Capco Park, big field there, and in the cold. I don't think I've ever hit a ball that far. And Joey Halzer and Jonah Borchert, two good players for Marquette, both going yard. And I did see Dominican actually the day after. It seems like I maybe saw Dominican on the better day. I don't know how they fared against Marquette.
Yeah, Marquette got to him. The Hilltoppers got to him. I believe it was 16-5 final score, and those guys brought the offense. And yeah, I can also attest to the not hitting a home run in my playing career that far at Capco Park. That's a deep field, and on a cold, chilly night, probably windy too, off the coast of Lake Michigan there. Probably not the easiest thing in the world, but they got the job done and got off to a good start there for sure. So And that led us to another deep ballpark at Menomonee Field. St. Thomas More got the W over Catholic Memorial to open up their season. Sam Mommer was really the star from that one, from what we saw.
Yeah, Mommer hit a grand slam and struck out 11 in their 11-2 win over Catholic Memorial. St. Thomas More always one of the better programs, but so is Catholic Memorial. So pretty big game there in the first week already, and Mommer being the clear standout in that one.
Yeah, for sure. And getting up to 90 on the mound and really dominating his opponents, and that was super impressive to witness and follow for sure. And then St. Thomas More, state runner-up last year. They started the season with walk, 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 and then a grand slam to open up their play. So they have a very tough non-conference schedule. Lots of Division One opponents that they'll be having to face and deal with. So they got off to a good start, and they look really impressive from an offensive and defensive perspective for sure. And that brings in our first guest of the Prep Baseball Wisconsin WIAA podcast. First guest ever, actually. Our own area scout, manager of content in the Badger State, Isaiah Glidden. He took on the West Osha Central Racine Case ball game. And Isaiah, we saw a couple of good pitchers and wanted to get your thoughts first on the work of Jacob Hodden.
Yeah.
And how was he effective on the mound for Racine Case and keeping him in that ball game to start?
Yeah. He, despite the cold, it was a really cold, windy day out there. Despite that, he was still, early on, he touched 87. As the game went on, he pitched all 6 innings. Kind of slowed down a little bit, but still he was sitting, low to mid 80s throughout. And it's a heavy fastball. It's heavy. There's some life to it. It's tough to pick up out of the hand. Didn't really have all that much feel for the off-speed pitches, but he flashed them a little bit. But yeah, he just created weak contact throughout the entire game and helped Racine Case in the game. So,
do you think that was kind of reflective of what he did over the winter at the South Milwaukee preseason ID?
Yeah, for sure. He was, obviously indoors when you're all warmed up and everything. He was up to 90 there, 91 maybe. So, the velo's a little bit different. But yeah, it's really easy. It comes out of the hand really clean. And he's also just a freaky athlete, 3-sport guy. Ran a 6.7 at South Milwaukee this year. Jumped out of the gym too, or out of the building. He's a freak athlete. So a lot of upside there still. It's pretty raw, but got to bet on the athlete sometimes.
What does it speak to a guy when he comes out in his first start of the year and it's 35 degrees, not the best conditions, and then is able to pitch as well as he does? Like, how do you evaluate the pitcher maybe differently, maybe the same, or even like what does that speak to him as a player, as a prospect?
Yeah, so that's always obviously that's in the back of my head. When I went out to the game, I didn't expect, to see. I didn't expect, 90 miles an hour from him. Just because it had to be 35, 30 degrees with wind. The first game of the year too. Not everyone's, up to 100%. So, but it's always in the back of your head. You gotta kind of get over. You just gotta remember it that it's cold. These kids aren't 100% ready yet. But it's still impressive stuff from Houghton.
Yeah, for sure. And then Brody Schulte was the winning pitcher from that, yes. I believe, for West Osha Central. And he was another guy, came to an event this winter and showed well at the Kenosha preseason ID. Could you talk about how Brody was effective in being able to maintain a lead for West Osha Central and really shutting down Racine Case?
Yeah. One of the more impressive things about his outing was the feel he just had for his off-speed pitches. He was spinning in this, tighter breaking ball, and he continued to flip it in for first pitch strikes throughout the entire game, and then also kind of threw it outside of the zone for some swing and miss. And then he was throwing a fastball. He was low to mid 80s, touched a 5 early on. But again, it's a heavy fastball. There's some life to it. some run, and just it plays his slider breaking ball plays well off that for sure. So it was good stuff. It was really impressive stuff for him too.
Nice. Yeah. And then really can you feel your hands now after that game? Like, did you
I will
recover?
say it was. I mean, I was trying to get some like make videos and tweet them out during the game, and it was. I truly could not move my fingers. I couldn't spell. I couldn't. It was bad. It was really cold. It was really cold. It was really cold. I'm glad I brought I had probably 3 or 4 sweatshirts on. Had a big pullover over all that, but it didn't help. It was so cold.
Would you rather be pitching in that weather or scouting?
No. Well, I hated pitching in the cold. I hated it so much. I don't know. I probably scouting, to be honest. As bad as it sounds, I do not like the cold for playing.
It's all right, but final question: does it get you pumped for the rest of the season in the WIAA?
Oh yeah. Kind of mad. Kind of was upset that there wasn't too much action going on during opening day. But I still the next day went to a good game, good matchup, good prospects. So yeah, I'm excited for the rest of this year. There's a bunch of teams that haven't even played yet, especially in our Power 25. I'm excited to see those, and then on those smaller teams too, the ones that have, a few prospects on them that don't get that love. Yeah, excited for it. It's going to be a good year.
For sure. Well, thank you, Isaiah. Appreciate you joining. And, this won't be the last time we see you on this podcast. That's for sure. So keep it up, man.
Yep. See you guys.
Let's see ya. So luckily, the guests don't end here. We're going to keep going. We got head coach of Menomonee Falls and the host of a WBCA, WIAA baseball podcast, Tim Gotzler. Coach, how are you doing this morning?
Doing phenomenal, man. Thanks for having us on. I'm really excited for you guys and for what the future of this podcast is. So thanks for having me on.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. And Coach, you've been involved with your own podcast in that sense with the WBCA, and we're excited, and we're going to try to match your level of insight, knowledge, and information. That's for sure.
Appreciate it.
Tell us a little bit, I guess, before we get started about your team. How did that podcast come about, the Baseball Wisconsin podcast?
Great question. So, yeah, actually started during COVID shutdowns. Myself and Greg Featherston from Jefferson kind of got a group of, I don't know, about 10 coaches together. We met on Thursdays, just like a big Zoom. And we had, I was the lowest, like resume-wise, I was nobody on this call. It was Ryan McGinnis, it was Scotty Holler, it was all these Hall of Fame coaches. And we just would go through, fundraising, practice planning, tryout procedures, just kind of sharing within our programs. And then eventually, I was talking with Jeff Klaus from Beloit Turner, who was on the call as well, one of the best coaches in the state. And he was like, man, we should have recorded these. And I thought, well, and then they kind of got the light bulb going. And then, to be honest with you, I was such a big follower of the ABCA podcast when Sheets was there. And I know Ryan Brownlee does a great job, now kind of phase 2. And I just thought, well, there's got to be a way, at the national level, it's grown the game so much, but at the Wisconsin level, could we do this? And at the time, Scott Holler was the WBCA president. Him and the executive board gave the green light. And I recorded that episode, August of 2020 in my basement, and the furnace was going off in the back, and the audio was cutting in and out. And so hopefully over the years, we're getting a little bit cleaner with our process. But yeah, that's kind of the genesis of it.
And who would you say is the coolest guest or the most, the most interesting guest that you've had?
Man, I don't want to insult any high school coaches in the state, but I think, I had Trent Mongero on, Jerry Weinstein, like some national brands. And just to like hear those guys talk. You hear them on all the other shows. And you kind of, there's like a little level of nervousness having those guys on because you don't want to sound like small time, even though you are. Recording from my classroom, with like 200 listeners versus other things that they do. But anyways, having like access to those guys, and then, what led to like a text on the side or, whatever it may be. So I would say some of those bigger like national clinic names that travel the world.
You guys went down to Tennessee. And could you just describe the ability just to play baseball and get live action against someone else, like rather than your program going against each other?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this Tennessee trip was a couple years in the making. And as you guys know, sometimes with the way the start of the baseball season, day one of tryouts sometimes is over spring break week. And this was just one of those years. And I know you saw probably another dozen schools go south where it just happened to work out this year. So we left Sunday morning. We took the vans. We went south. We took 4 vans down there. Just reminded me of my small college baseball days. It was PB&Js and smelly guys riding down in vans. And then we were able to link up with like a host school through a connection of a connection. One of my best friends from college lives in that area. His sons go to this private academy called Briarcrest Christian School. It's a K-12. And it just, I mean, guys, when we drove in, our guys' jaws were on the ground. It was just gorgeous academy, turf everywhere, video boards, weight room. I mean, it was so well done. So that was kind of like our host school. We played them on Tuesday night. And, we saw their number 1 is going to Mississippi State because they had a bunch of rain. Like, we weren't expected to see these guys, but because they had to get their innings in, their 1 was going to Mississippi State. Their 2 was a sophomore. I mean, if he's not a top 5 round draft pick in 2026, I don't know who is. We got no hit. We were up 3-0. We got walked off 4-3 in the bottom of the 7th. Like, it was devastating. But we learned a lot. We got a lot going. That next night, we played Collierville. Collierville's got a school of over 3,000 kids, one of the most affluent suburbs in the Memphis area. School was built 5 years ago. I mean, it looks like an SEC campus. It's just 100 yards of indoor facility. It was gorgeous. Nicest outdoor field in the state of Tennessee. It won last year. Like, it was another jaw-dropping moment. We see their 1 who's going to Tennessee. Same thing. Like, they had rain. They had to get their guys in. We didn't do much on offense. We hung in there. We fought. We ended up losing 3-1. But just had a great experience. And just to see that level of competition. Like, I think everybody knows the talent in the South. You see it all over. As you go south, typically athletics, especially outdoor sports, get better. They're a month ahead of every Wisconsin team that they play, and in so many ways. And then we had a couple days of practice in the back end, and we drove back. And just to make those connections, to get outside, to play, even though we took 2 losses, I hopefully gives our guys a lot of confidence. We got a really young team. I mean, I think this is my 15th year as a head coach. This is probably the least amount of innings we have ever had returning. So if there's ever a group to go south and learn about each other and get humbled and shoved, this was definitely the group to do it. And I think we came back a different group in those vans late Friday night.
You mentioned the losing a lot of innings last year. There were 4 guys that you had who were in our top 100 in the 2023 class. And of course you were excellent a year ago. So how do you expect to fill those innings, maybe in terms of players, or maybe you're not even sure who's going to fill those innings, but maybe more so how?
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit all hands on deck. I mean, pitching is a priority in our program. We allocate a lot of resources to that side of the ball. And we've had success in our youth programs, success at our lower levels as well. So coming up the chain, we get a pretty good idea when they're freshmen, what that might look like, and being intentional with our training and how we use them, and trying to predict a year or 2 out who those guys could be. But then at the same time, guys hit puberty, they take a velocity jump, they, work, they get with the right guy at the right academy, whatever it may be. So, pitchers and catchers week is huge for us to kind of get an idea what we have, to get guys into our system, and that's on top of, and they start going live at bats and throwing bullpens in the new year at their academy. So just seeing who they are, where they're at, checking with those guys at school. Tryouts is tryouts. We get to see him on the mound a little bit. And then honestly, we kind of operate under the out-getter mentality. We don't always have starters and relievers. And, some guys are better with a longer warm-up or maybe a PO. But, early in the season here, we really try to figure out, like, who can come off the field and pitch, who can be stretched out, who can do different things in different spots. And that's all part of, like, just a huge emphasis on, how do we get 21 outs? What's the path to get there? We've had all different types of arms over the year, like every other program. We haven't had, the huge fastball guy. So we've been trying to get creative with how we collect outs. So when you have a new group, it's going to be ever changing. It'd be hard to say that, I have a rotation right now, or I could even give a full-on depth chart because we just don't have that volume quite yet. But, we take intentional reps in practice. We chart, our bullpens, our live ABs, all these things that we do is all to get them ready to pitch at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in a conference or non-conference game.
Yeah, and then could you describe some of those principles, like not even just for your pitching in your program, but also just as a team as a whole now with this young cast? Can you describe some of your principles that you're trying to instill early on and what you use the Tennessee trip for?
Yeah, it really kind of feeds into the narrative as we try to we prepare in a at or above game speed, right? So putting these guys in an uncomfortable environment. So many of these kids have just, for lack of a better term, dominated sub varsity baseball or whatever it may be. And that jump to varsity, I think anybody who's listening to this that experienced that jump at some point, the speed, the intensity, the attention to detail. So trying to create a training environment where that's what we do, and everything matters, and every small detail is charted and calculated, and make them uncomfortable. Like there's that balance in practice of you don't want to crush them, but like we don't spend a lot of time on feel good BP and easy reps, and that's not the game. And obviously Tennessee or any high level team you play, you're going to find out real quick what that looks like. So it comes out of my mouth. The coaches were driving these points home, and then we go down there and you see it play out, and you see what an SEC arm looks like, and you see what an SEC bat looks like, and you see them do all these things so well. And it kind of is an eye-opening moment for young players. They think, oh, this is why coach is such a nut job at practice. This is why he doesn't let us get away with anything, because it all matters. And it could be a PFP, a pick, a two-strike approach, getting a bunt down, anything, those things that win games, and when the margins are so tight. So part of it's intentional in how we just train them, creating the practice environment, and then really trying to play a great competition throughout the year, whether it's in the state of Wisconsin or outside the state like we were lucky enough to do this year.
Yeah, and then you're kind of coming into conference play here, approaching it this week, weather pending, of course. Could you tell us about what makes the Greater Metro such a difficult conference to play in?
It's a great question. And I know people get territorial about their conferences. And it's seed meetings, and then at the state tournament, we've been lucky enough to be at the state tournament the last 3 years, and you sit on these Zoom calls with 7 other coaches, and people are territorial about, our part of the state's better, and we got dudes, and we had to beat this guy and this guy, and in the Milwaukee area, in the Greater Metro, right? One thing I love about it is some good old rivalries. Okay, it's a lot of schools about the same size. And that Milwaukee area just always has been so competitive with sports. And I spent time in the Classic 8, and now in the Little 10 as well as the Greater Metro. And it's just like for us on the GMC side, it's the pitching. It seems like if I had to categorize the last few years, and it's no knock against the offenses by any means, but it feels like there's just high-end arms every year in the GMC. And what works in our area, and I know Madison guys would say the same thing, or the Valley guys would say the same thing, like not only is it in your conference, you're going to have to beat 1 or 2 of those guys in the postseason. So you're going to end up playing those guys 3 times, and there's a good chance you're going to see a 1 or a 2, and whoever that may be, it's probably a college arm. So like that's what stands out to me in this area is the high-end pitching. And as soon as one graduates, another one shows up, or they take those big jumps in the offseason, and PBR has an event, and all of a sudden a kid pops a big number, and it's just relentless. It's relentless with the arms we see. And I look back. I mean, I was in high school 20-something years ago, and I tell my guys all the time, like I was first team all conference player, blah blah blah. I don't know if I would start on a lot of the teams I've coached, in the past 10 years, because the talent pool has just gotten so much better. And it's the academies, it's year-round opportunities, it's the strength. It's organizations like PBR that have done such a great job. So when I bring it back to the GMC, there's Hall of Fame coaches all over the conference. Like, I mean, it's crazy. There's state championships all over the conference, and then there seems to just be an influx of college arms every year, on top of, again, coaches who know how to manage an offense and run really good programs.
Really, for your Menomonee Falls team here, just kind of like taking us through a little thinking exercise, could you give us one word really to describe your 2024 team?
I'd say gritty. I mean, it's a gritty group, and that's going to be our brand. Again, that's the group that we have. We're tough. We got some undersized guys, if that's in height or weight, and Not a lot of big names across the state, but I think a gritty group would be the way that I would describe us.
One guy I wanted to talk about, Cale Geiger. He's someone that we got to look at one of our preseason showcases over at Sticks in Waukesha, and he was impressive. I had never seen him. I joined staff not too long ago, so it was my first look at him, and he's a sophomore who's been up to 90. Talk about the importance of Cale Geiger maybe filling some of those innings that were vacated from last year.
Yeah, great question. And, Cale's one of those kids who, kind of probably came out of nowhere, and had a huge velocity jump. He's a phenomenal kid. Let me just start there. I mean, when it comes to nutrition, weight room, academics, he's not a kid I worry about in regards to doing what's right, and he's committed to the process. So with him, he as a freshman last year played up on our on our JV program, had a successful year. We were hoping could take that leap to varsity, and broke tryouts with us. He pitched in Tennessee and got to get his feet wet a little bit. He's got an arm talent. I mean, he has talent that is a head turning talent. That's exciting for us. With a kid like that who's yet to be exposed to this level, there's so much more coaching and teaching that goes on because the raw tools are there. And I think a lot of times one thing I know I've struggled with in the past, and I think coaches would agree, is sometimes when you get a really highly talented kid, you think maybe because they play like a senior or play like a college player, they're still a 15, 16-year-old. Like they still have to get mentored through and work through a lot of these things. But, what Cale can do with a ball in his hand or with a bat, and, he moves pretty well. He's a phenomenal athlete. Gives us a lot of opportunities, like I said, as we're trying to figure out on the mound where he best fits. I'm lucky enough to have some of the seniors back that have been part of this winning culture and understand what it takes and why we're doing what we're doing. And it's been really helpful the first couple weeks here to have the older guys welcome him in, because that's the other piece too. And I think a lot of coaches would agree with this statement, is sometimes when a sophomore comes up and, that's usually an older guy sits, right? Like he's taken a spot, and coaches have been in that situation, players have been in that situation, and it's maybe not always with an open arms from the older guys, but we have not seen that yet. I mean, I think our older guys recognize the talent. He's a phenomenal kid, great teammate, and the talent is there, and he's going to continue to ascend. He's got great genetics, great parents. He's going to be a recruiting coordinator's dream, just projecting out what he could look like at age 18 or 19 on a college campus.
Describe a little bit of that mentoring process. You said it's important to break him in, and as he gets his feet wet, tries to take that next step to being a valuable contributor at the varsity level. What does that mentorship process look like? Is that something where you kind of throw him in there and say, figure it out, and he'll take his lumps? Is it something where you try to pick his spots? Maybe is that mostly done in practice? What does that look like?
Well, a little bit of both. That's a great question, and I think each situation is unique. With him, again, we're down in Tennessee playing Briarcrest. We're up 3-0. He came in relief, and he didn't have the outing he wanted to, and that was part of the process. Right? As much as we want to win that game, I think it's a huge learning tool for him. So there's some of that, throw you in the fire, but here are the tools and why we do what we do. And part of it too is you got to have some pitchability, right? Like 90 is a big number, 90 is a recruitable number. But if I went to filter 90 on PBR, I mean, he's not the only one in the state of Wisconsin. He's not the only one in Waukesha County, not the only one in the GMC. So okay, it's an important number. It's great, and it means a lot. But there's more than just rearing back and throwing the baseball. And if you want to get meaningful outs in big games moving forward, and you want to pitch at the collegiate level, there's so much more to it than just popping a big number here and there. So some of those are conversations, and some of those you've got to find out on the field. And we've had players come through our program and area programs that we can use as examples of here's why we do what we do. Here's what it takes to win. So I think it's a little bit of both, David, as we talk about getting that talent in the game, putting him in a position where he can be successful, but also being patient with growing pains. When I talk about our 2023 team last year, we started off 16-0. We weren't that good in regards to who goes undefeated, right? I know Janesville Craig and some other teams like that's not normal in baseball. We knew coming into 24 that we would take a little bit more lumps, maybe on the wins and loss side, especially early in the season, but that down the road, these are lessons that got to be learned on the field, in the fire, so that when conference play starts, when April turns to May and hopefully May turns to June, that we're playing our best baseball at the end of the year.
Yeah, so you mentioned really Kale and making it to state 3 times in a row. Could you talk about your formula almost for what you need to see from your group and your guys to make that run at a fourth straight state tournament appearance?
Yeah, I mean, I think what do we need to do? Well, we need to continue to progress. And I know this is some coach speak, but like when you have a team, you can't settle, and you have to continue to push the envelope, and you got to find out what kind of guys you got. It's every team is unique, and every team has different challenges and different opportunities, and maybe even a different ceiling. And I think it's the art of coaching to figure out like what tools in our toolbox as coaches do we need to dip into this year that is going to be best for this 2024 team. And I think about the years, the groups that we've had, and if it's offense, defense, base running, culture, leadership, everything that we do, it's finding the right mix for the right team at the right time. And I think that's where, again, people would argue that they have a great staff, and I know they do, and our staff is second to none. And that's something we're always working on, right, as kind of the head of the program, the head of the culture. My coaches are going to work. We're always constantly improving in the offseason, trying to win in the margins, find something that's going to make our program better. But in doing that, until you get the guys together and understand the team dynamics, you got to take care of the culture first. Like if something's not right there, you're going to get a watered down product. You're not going to get their maximum ability. So I think our goal will be to find out what our brand is. Here's how we're going to play. Let's do it better than anyone else in the state of Wisconsin. And if we get beat, let's not beat ourselves, because I really, not just us, but I think more games are lost than won, especially late in the season. When that margin of error is so thin, if it's errors, if it's walks, if it's whatever it may be. At the state tournament, it's a different beast. Sectionals, I would say to anyone in the state of Wisconsin, any sport, is the craziest day in Wisconsin athletics. Sectional Tuesday is just absolutely nuts across 4 divisions, and then you get the state tournament, and then you got to try to win 3 games there. So it's tough. It's tough. We're very fortunate to be in Appleton, and we're going to do everything we can to be back there a 4th straight year. But knowing that that's not going to happen until June. So today's practice in a few hours, what does that look like, and how can we run the best practice today inside the gym while it's 24 degrees outside and snowing, and just like going one day at a time and just trying to like win each day. And then it's a game day or a practice day, and it's all part of the process in regards to, playing our best baseball and being healthy, doing it at the end of the year. And whatever the record is. But just staying in the fight, trusting the process. This is why we do what we do, but also adapting to the clientele and the team that we have in 2024.
And thanks to Tim Gotzler for joining us on this week's episode, on our first episode of the year. Always great to hear from him and learn about his role at Menomonee Falls High School. And we talked about earlier a little bit about how not the greatest week for the first week of baseball, but a lot more happening, especially within the state. This upcoming week, we've got a number of games that we're going to be looking at. So why don't we go through the games, starting with Monday and taking us through the week. Maddox, why don't you start us out?
Yeah, so first game Monday, April 1st. No tricks, none of that on April Fool's Day. But we got Wanakee and Watertown taking it on. So Wanakee's a very young team. They have a few interesting prospects that really performed well at the Madison preseason ID. In addition to Watertown, who we talked about earlier, who's really made some noise in the Division I field. So that should be pretty interesting for Monday's game.
Mm-hmm. On Tuesday, we'll be watching Whitnall and McQuantigo, 2 teams we're excited to see. Tell us a little bit more about that one, Maddox.
Yeah, Whitnall, honestly, under the radar Division II power that we kind of enjoy. They're going to be hovering around the bubble, that's for sure. A lot of veteran 2024 seniors on that group, and the same can be said for McQuantigo. They made it into our Power 25 they're going to have to go through the Classic 8, which is just going to be a gauntlet like that through that conference season. So any win they can pick up, any quality win, is a step in the right direction for Menomonee with a plethora of arms and a lot of offensive prospects too that we're interested to see and follow along with. But yeah, that leads us into Wednesday. Probably game of the day between Union Grove, a top 5 Power 25 team who was always bringing it, and then Kenosha Indian Trail, who really should be competitive this year, just getting their season started early on, and we're very interested to see like how they play in the Southeast Conference, and obviously Union Grove coming in as one of the D1 favorites this year, so that should be a good battle of a couple of D1 powers.
For Thursday, we've got 3 games that we are going to be watching. Burlington takes on Franklin, Janesville Craig and Sun Prairie East battling it out, and then Hartford Union and Kettle Moraine. Maddox, which one of those 3 are you most excited for?
The Burlington Franklin, that's a rematch of last year's, I believe, the quarterfinal at the WIAA state tournament in D1, and that was probably one of my favorite games at that tournament, up at Fox City Stadium for sure. The back and forth affair between Burlington and Franklin. So I'm very interested to see like how they come back. Both teams lost a couple of very like important seniors from that 2023 group, but really have the prospects to make a run back at the state tournament here coming up early on this year. And that leads us into our April 5th games. A lot of the Milwaukee area teams will really stand out in this. Greater Metro, of course, Germantown and Brooks Central, really 2 teams that sort of struggled last year. They probably didn't quite meet their expectations, and I think this year they're kind of setting up to be in a good spot and to be solid programs, and they're facing off in a little mini rivalry in the Greater Metro, and that's an interesting way to start their season. It's going to be a tough ask. That's part of the conference slate there in the Greater Metro, and then a non-conference matchup between Wisconsin Lutheran, who moving up to Division I this year in their field, and they're gonna have to take on a power top 10 team in Arrowhead, who also lost a lot of offensive pieces, and I'll be interested to see their lineup and how they recover from losing that 2023 group, but a lot of power between Wisconsin Lutheran and Arrowhead.
Yeah, and then to cap off the week, Saturday, we've got Menomonee Falls and Homestead. Homestead in our top 25, Menomonee Falls on the bubble, of course, coached by Tim Gotzler, who we just had on. So that's going to be a game that we're going to be watching on Saturday. A lot of action this week and a lot of games, more so than the first week, maybe delaying it a little bit into the second week. We're going to be excited to watch some good baseball this week.
Yep, that's for sure. And as always, game dates are subject to change as of right now, especially with this Wisconsin weather that we keep referencing. But yeah, really appreciate listening in on our first episode of the Prep Baseball Wisconsin WIAA podcast. So good luck to all teams this week, and we'll be excited to follow along. Make sure to keep up with the Power 25 and the Daily Roundup and Diamond Notes early on here.